Almost no one outside Brazil has ever heard of it. Even devoted Volkswagen fans rarely know that in the 1970s, a sports coupe called the SP2 was built there, a car with German roots and a Brazilian soul, often praised as the most beautiful Volkswagen ever made. Today, you'll discover its fascinating story. In the 1950s, Brazil introduced restrictive laws that effectively closed its huge market to imported cars. For decades, foreign models were either completely banned or taxed with duties exceeding 50% of their price. That forced major automakers to build factories and develop models locally. And to understand how, in such a not-so-rich country, a domestic sports coupe could appear, we need to look at the history of Brazilian performance cars before the SP2. Because yes, they did exist. In the early 1960s, Willis Overland Motors produced a licensed version of the French Alpine A108 under the name Willis Interlagos. Only 822 units were built, but the car became an important symbol of Brazil's early sports ambitions. Around the same time, Italian immigrant Gennaro Reno Malzoni created the DKW GT Malzoni. A few years later, he co-founded Puma Veículos e Motores and launched the Puma GT. Early cars used three-cylinder, two-stroke DKW engines, but when the brand left Brazil, Puma switched to Volkswagen components. Other attempts followed. In 1964, the truck maker Brassinca released the 4200 GT with a steel body and a Chevrolet inline-six. In 1966, F&M introduced the Onça, a coupe built on Alfa Romeo 2000 running gear and also designed by Malzoni. And in 1968, enthusiasts tried to market the Lorena GT, a Volkswagen-based kit car, but in reality, fewer than 10 cars were completed. Clearly, during the 1960s, the idea of a national Brazilian sports coupe was alive and well, but most of these projects came from small workshops and private enthusiasts. Volkswagen do Brasil, on the other hand, could only offer the Karmann Ghia Type 14 and its local sibling, the Type 145. Stylish, yes, but not exactly true sports coupes. And it was against this backdrop that the Volkswagen SP2 appeared, the first truly Brazilian sports coupe from a global manufacturer. In the early 1970s, Volkswagen do Brasil might never have created its own sports coupe of a new era if it hadn't been for Rudolf Wilhelm Karl Liebing. He began working for the German brand as a production engineer immediately after the war, in 1945. By the mid-1960s, Liebing had advanced so far in his career that he became manager of Volkswagen's plant in North Hesse, and from 1965 to 1968, he served as director of Auto Union in Ingolstadt. After that came the Brazilian period. On March 1, 1968, Liebing took over management of Volkswagen do Brasil in São Bernardo do Campo. According to one version, the SP2 project began after the director of Puma, a small Brazilian sports car manufacturer, suggested to Volkswagen, which at the time lacked a modern sports car, that they should display a Puma model on their stand at the 1969 São Paulo Auto Show. The design brief for the new model was straightforward: a modern, two-seat sports coupe built on an existing Volkswagen do Brasil chassis. This last condition reflected the limited budget and the company's desire to reduce development costs. By 1969, the project had already been given its own code name, Project X. The mission was clear: to change, or rather revive, the image of Volkswagen in Brazil, which at the time was considered anything but a maker of sports cars. In addition to designer Marcio Piancastelli, Liebing himself contributed to the styling. He wanted a car that would also appeal to women drivers. For this reason, he often consulted his wife, Helga, and some automotive historians even regard her as the seventh member of the design team. Finally, in March 1971, the prototype was unveiled at the German Industrial Fair in São Paulo. It featured a new silhouette and a distinctive front end, soon nicknamed the leading face. Its hallmark was a slanted nose with two pairs of round headlights framed in gray. From there, Volkswagen do Brasil moved into full development and testing. Body panel production, chassis, engines, and transmissions were all to be manufactured locally on a dedicated production line in São Bernardo do Campo. For higher body quality, the welding work was to be done at Carmengia, while final assembly was planned for Volkswagen's own plant. The car received the internal designation Type 149, and the first production unit, serial number BL000101, was completed on June 23, 1972. And now, just take a look at the photos, because what the Brazilians, Italians, and Germans achieved together remains striking even today. A low two-seat coupe with a short wheelbase and a shark nose wearing the Volkswagen badge appeared around the same time as BMW's aggressive new 5 Series. Yet the silhouette of the SP2 had its own unique magic. Strongly raked windows, that's one. Louvers behind the tiny rear quarter windows, that's two. The combination of sharply angled glass surfaces with a subtle V-shaped body contour, that's three. And finally, the flamboyant rear treatment with a small trunk lid and compact taillights slanted inward, perfectly integrated into the three-dimensional curves of the rear fenders. Despite its dry, anonymous factory index, the SP2 was so beautiful that its styling could easily have borne a Porsche badge. Yet at that very moment, Porsche was producing the awkward 914 with design work by Heinrich Klei under Harm Lagai, while Volkswagen in Germany was preparing to release the Scirocco, styled by none other than Giorgetto Giugiaro. I would even dare to say that this Brazilian pseudo-sports coupe looked far more interesting than either Porsche's oddball creation or Volkswagen's Italian-designed future star. Mass production of the Volkswagen SP2 began on June 26, 1972. The car was priced at 29,700 Brazilian cruzeiros, almost twice as much as the local Fusca, which the world knows as the Käfer or Beetle. That made it an expensive toy by Brazilian standards. But beauty always comes at a cost, and many enthusiasts were willing to pay extra for a car that stood out on the streets as much as a Ferrari or Maserati, even if it wore the Volkswagen badge. The name SP2 has several interpretations. Some claimed it stood for Sao Paulo, others believed it meant sport prototype, but witty critics joked that it really meant sem potência, without power in Portuguese. And indeed, under the rear luggage compartment sat a modest 1.7-liter flat-4 engine designated BL. Almost a Porsche, one might say, if not for one key detail. It produced only 65 horsepower. For a sports coupe, that was simply not enough. Thanks to its sleek body and low stance, the SP2 could reach a respectable top speed of 161 kilometers per hour. But the sprint from 0 to 100 took more than 17 seconds, which was far too slow for a car that looked so aggressive. Still, in everyday driving, the car felt light, stable, and far more prestigious than its humble mechanicals suggested. The interior matched the exterior's sporty ambitions. Deep bucket seats, a tachometer, oil temperature gauge, and a meter gave it a European flair. While the equipment was modest, even a basic audio system was included, something not every Brazilian car of the early 70s could boast. To make the car slightly more affordable, Volkswagen briefly offered a cheaper version called the SP1, powered by a 1.6-liter BV engine, producing just 54 horsepower. Its top speed was only 149 kilometers per hour, 92 miles per hour. Unsurprisingly, buyers weren't interested. It looked identical to the SP2, but drove even slower. The SP1 quickly faded from the catalog. Interestingly, many historians consider the SP2 a conceptual predecessor to the Porsche 924. When you look at the rear quarters and side profile, the resemblance becomes clear. This makes the SP2 not only a rare collectible, but also an important link in the evolution of German automotive design. Volkswagen do Brasil initially had ambitious export plans. The company even prepared cars for the United States, but American safety regulations required headlights to be mounted higher, and the SP2 failed to comply. Then came the 1973 oil crisis, which hit demand for sports cars worldwide. The timing could not have been worse, and the SP2 lost its chance to shine on the international stage. By the time production ended on December 16, 1975, Volkswagen had built just 10,205 units. Of these, 881 were exported, with 155 ending up in Nigeria. But the SP2 never officially reached the US or European markets. Today, its rarity is exactly what makes it so valuable. Well-preserved examples regularly fetch $50,000 to $60,000 at auctions, and in Brazil, the SP2 has its own loyal following, complete with car clubs and anniversary gatherings. The 40th birthday was celebrated in Barra Bonita in 2011, and the car's 50th anniversary was honored in June 2022 at the Haraz Tuiuti racetrack in Sao Paulo. No, the SP2 never became a mass-market success. Outside Brazil, it remains largely unknown. But it left its mark in Volkswagen's history, in the hearts of enthusiasts, and in automotive design as a whole. Strength fades, but beauty endures. And perhaps it is beauty, not power, that truly saves the world.